Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Rosita Worrell. I serve as the Chair of the Sea Alaska Lands Committee. I'm also the Vice Chair of the Sea Alaska Board of Directors. I could tell you that our Chair would have been here today. He would like to be here, and I know his thoughts are here with us. My name is also Yedekletsauk. It's an ancient name, thousands of years old, that's been passed down for our occupation during our whole time here. We've been here for 10,000 years. So it's a name that's, the meaning has been lost. My name is also Kahani. My ceremonial name is Kahani. It means woman who stands in the place of a man, and I like to remind our board members that. I'm also from the Thunderbird House in Klukwan, and I'm a child of the Sakai clan from Haines. You've heard all of the, probably as much as you want to about the technical aspects of the bill. I think Chuck did a very good job of outlining, the bill itself. But if I could, I'd just like to briefly share with you the context of this legislation, what we were looking at when we went after this legislation. Our Lands Committee began a review of Sea Alaska. We wanted to see what have we done in the past years and what could we do better. And more importantly, how could we integrate our cultural values into the corporation? We knew that the corporation was something really new to us. When we went after our land claims, we were looking at control and ownership of our land. We really didn't like the idea of trust lands, where the Secretary of Interior could tell us what we could do and what we couldn't do. Our leaders wanted ownership and control of our land, so we went with corporations. And that was about all we knew about corporations. And we began to study these corporations, and we found out in our history that there were some things that we needed to change. And the very first thing that we did when we started this land legislation is we said, we want to ensure our cultural sustainability. And I know I'm always amazed when I hear people talk about us that we're just a corporation. Corporations don't select cultural and historical sites. And one of the reasons why we decided to do that was because we found that the current legislation, federal legislation, current federal protections don't protect our sacred sites. I personally have been working on Indian Point right out here in Juneau. It was my first entry, and I will tell you about 30, 40 years ago when I got involved. And that was my first act, was to try to protect Indian Point. It's a shamanic burial site. And when the federal government was going to build NOAA out there, our clan leaders came and said, Rosita, you will die to protect that site. And so for the last 15 years, I've been working, trying to protect that site under a federal program called the Traditional Cultural Properties. I filed for that nomination. I kept going, finding all kinds of resistance, all kinds of things I had to do, and more recently I've been told that my application is now outdated and I'm going to have to start that process over again. So this corporation selected historical and cultural sites because of its significance to us as Native people. We believe that the spirits of our ancestors roamed through this land, and it was really important for us to be able to select those sacred sites. The other thing that we were looking at was diversity. We wanted to look at, we knew that we were in timber development, but we were more concerned about the diversity, economic diversity within our region. We wanted to expand just beyond timber development. And so we came up with, in our discussions, we started talking about, I think we called them Native future sites. We didn't really know what we were talking about, except when we created this term, but we knew we wanted to have small acreages of land so that we could begin things like ecotourism, educational camps, and I know that some people are concerned that we might enter into competition with maybe fish camps or fishing lodges. And so we ended up not selecting a lot of those sites that we wanted to because of that concern that we were going to be competing. And I thought this was, this was one of the hallmarks of capitalism is competition, but we found out that, you know, too much competition is not too great and not really well liked. So we ended up pulling back from some of the selections of those sites. But the idea really was for diversity. And I might note that we've probably had over 200 meetings. And I don't know how many meetings where we've had to fly into Sitka, probably 10, 12 meetings there, trying to make sure that we could compromise. And I will tell you that our people, our tribal people, didn't want us to give up on some of those sites. But in the interest of compromise, we did. The other thing that we were looking at was economic sustainability. And we thought this idea would be really embraced when we were going to be giving up a lot of the old growth. And we are very active in the Tongass Futures Roundtable, and we had heard continuously, the mantra was old growth, old growth, old growth and roadless. We must protect old growth and roadless. And so we said, good, let's select some second growth, because we want to move towards sustainability. If you look at our harvest record, you know, and all of the native corporations, we were all cutting down timber harvest at the same time. So in looking at sustainability, we thought it would be beneficial for us as a native community, but also for the region to move towards economic sustainability with our timber harvest with the selection of second growth. We've done some modeling. We know that there's going to be a period where we're not going to be able to harvest, but we're looking at projections of how we could make timber harvest sustainable. We would probably never harvest to the degree that we did in the past with the large acreages, but we are looking at modeling to try to move towards the sustainability. So those were the intent of the legislation: cultural sustainability, diversity, and economic sustainability. And along with the economic sustainability, you've heard some discussion from Rick and reports about what we're trying to do with our land stewardship. And I have to say that I'm very proud of what we're trying to accomplish with our land stewardships. I know that our record in the past, a lot of people don't like what we did in the past, but I want to tell you that we are concerned about our environment. Our goal is to be good land stewards, and I will tell you that we are now, you know, giving lectures. We were invited to Oxford University to talk about our land stewardship. As a consequence of that, we've been invited all over the world to talk to other indigenous groups about the kinds of things that we're trying to accomplish in terms of integrating our cultural values along with science. And this is the dimension that we found out is that we needed to add to our cultural values, is this whole dimension of science. And I think we've probably spent well over $20 million or more on the scientific research that we've done, because we want to make sure that our children and our grandchildren have the opportunity to live here in Southeast Alaska. We are not developers that are just going to be here to develop Southeast Alaska and leave. This is our homeland, and we want to protect this homeland for our future generations. Commissioners, I hope that you will find it within yourselves to support our land legislation. I think this land legislation is good for Native people, and I think it's good for the state of Alaska.